What happens when the weakest member of the pack becomes the one thing that could save them all? For Alara Moonwhisper, life as an Omega meant existing in the shadows. She was the daughter of Beta Wolves who served the Silvercrest pack with quiet devotion, but fate had marked her differently. While her parents could shift into powerful forms beneath the full moon, Alara remained trapped in her human skin, her wolf silent, her power dormant. The pack whispered that she was broken, cursed, a stain on her family's honor. But when Alpha Kale Blackthorn rejected her as his fated mate in front of the entire pack during the Harvest Moon ceremony, severing their bond with a brutality that left her gasping on the marble floor, everything changed. And what happens next? No one was prepared for. The harvest moon hung heavy in the October sky, painting the ceremonial grounds in shades of amber and blood. Alara stood among the crowd, her heart hammering against her ribs as the ancient ritual unfolded. She'd known for 3 days, ever since her 18th birthday when the mate bond had snapped into place like a thunderclap in her soul. She'd felt it, that golden thread connecting her to Kale Blackthorn, the Alpha King of the Northern Territories, the most powerful wolf in 500 miles. The scent of him had invaded her senses that morning, forest after rain, smoldering embers, ozone before a storm, and cold steel. It was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. She hadn't told anyone. How could she? An Omega mated to an Alpha King. The moon goddess had surely made a mistake. The ceremony proceeded with its usual grandeur. Hundreds of wolves from neighboring packs had gathered to witness the Alpha King's official selection of his Luna. The pack laws were clear. An Alpha must choose a mate before his 25th year, or risk losing his position to challengers. Kyle had reached that deadline. Alara watched from the back of the crowd, her fingers twisting in the E2 fabric of her simple gray dress. She told herself she would remain silent. She would let him choose someone worthy, someone strong and beautiful like Seraphina Nightshade, the stunning daughter of the Eastern Alpha, whose scent of cinnamon and iron preceded her like a declaration of war. But the moon goddess had other plans. When Kale stepped onto the raised dais, his massive frame commanding instant silence, Alara felt the bond pull at her chest. Her wolf, that silent, sleeping part of her soul, stirred for the first time in her life. The sensation was so sudden, so overwhelming, that she gasped aloud. Kyle's head snapped toward her, his storm-gray eyes finding hers across the sea of people. She watched his nostrils flare as he caught her scent, lavender fields at dawn, morning dew on wildflowers, and something else, something ancient and powerful that even she couldn't name. Time stopped. The entire pack fell silent as they watched their Alpha King's face transform from regal composure to shock, then to something darker. Disgust. No, he said, his voice carrying across the grounds with supernatural clarity. It's not possible. Alara wanted to run, but her feet remained rooted to the earth. The crowd parted between them like water, creating a clear path. She could feel hundreds of eyes on her, could smell the sudden spike of curiosity and malice in the air. "Come forward, Omega," Kyle commanded, and the Alpha authority in his voice gave her no choice. Her legs moved of their own accord, carrying her through the crowd. Whispers erupted on all sides. Alara Moonwhisper? The broken one? She can't even shift. She climbed the steps to the dais on trembling legs. Up close, Kale was even more imposing, 6.5 feet of pure muscle and dominance, his black hair falling across his forehead, his jawline sharp enough to cut. The mate bond thrummed between them, visible now as a faint golden shimmer in the air. Is it true? The pack's high elder, ancient wolf named Mordecai, stepped forward, his white beard flowing. "Do you claim the Alpha King as your fated mate?" Alara's voice came out as a whisper. I didn't ask for this." "Answer the question," Kyle growled, and she felt his alpha power press against her like a physical weight. "Yes," she breathed. "The bond. I felt it on my birthday, 3 days ago." A wave of power washed over the crowd as the pack processed this revelation. Fated mates were sacred, chosen by the moon goddess herself. To reject a fated mate was to court disaster, to spit in the face of divine will. But Kale Blackthorn had not become Alpha King by bowing to anything, even the gods. "Then I reject it," he declared, his voice ringing out like a death knell. I, Cale Blackthorn, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, formally reject the mate bond with Alara Moonwhisper." The pain hit her like a lightning strike to the chest. Alara screamed, her knees buckling as the golden thread between them began to fray and snap. It felt like her soul was being torn in half, like every bone in her body was breaking simultaneously. She collapsed onto the marble, writhing as the bond severed with devastating finality. Through the haze of agony, she heard Seraphina's delighted laugh. "A wise choice, my king," the she-wolf purred, stepping onto the dais. Her scent of cinnamon and iron grew stronger, triumphant. "You cannot lead the packs with a broken Omega at your side." Kyle didn't look at Alara as she gasped for air. "Remove her," he ordered the guards. "See that she leaves pack territory by dawn. If she returns, she will be executed as a rogue." "But Alpha," one of the guards protested, a younger wolf named Thomas, whose kindness had always been a quiet rebellion. "She won't survive the winter alone. It's against pack law to cast out the weak without provision." "Did I stutter?" Kyle's eyes flashed gold with his wolf's fury. "She leaves tonight." Alara felt hands grip her arms, hauling her upright. The world spun sickeningly as they dragged her down the steps. She caught a glimpse of her parents in the crowd, her mother's face pale with shock, her father's expression carefully blank. But neither moved to help her. Neither spoke in her defense. They'd always been ashamed of their broken daughter. Now they were simply relieved to be rid of her. The guards deposited her at the pack border an hour later, at the edge of the great northern woods. November snow had already begun to fall, and Alara wore only her thin ceremony dress and a cloak one of the younger guards had secretly given her. "I'm sorry," Thomas whispered, his eyes filled with genuine regret. "I can't disobey an Alpha command, but—" He pressed something into her palm, a small knife. "May the moon goddess protect you." Then they were gone, and she was alone. Alara stood at the border for a long moment, staring back at the only home she'd ever known. The packhouse lights glowed warm in the distance, unreachable as stars. She could still feel the phantom ache where the mate bond had been, a hollow emptiness in her chest that would never quite heal. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of pine and snow and the promise of a long, dark night. She turned away and walked into the wilderness. The blizzard hit 3 hours before dawn. Alara had been stumbling through the forest in a daze, her thin shoes soaked through, her fingers numb despite being buried in the folds of her cloak. The first snowflakes had seemed almost gentle, but winter in the Northern Territories showed no mercy to the weak. Within minutes, the wind became a howling beast, tearing at her clothes and stealing the breath from her lungs. The snow fell so thick and fast that she couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. Every tree looked the same, every direction equally hopeless. Her wolf, that silent, broken part of her, offered no guidance, no strength, no warmth. "Please," she whispered to the darkness, though she didn't know who she was begging. The moon goddess who had supposedly chosen her? The pack that had cast her out? "Please, I don't want to die." But the storm only howled louder. She lost track of time. Minutes or hours might have passed as she forced one foot in front of the other. Her body had stopped shivering. A bad sign, she knew, though her thoughts were growing fuzzy and slow. When she stumbled over a snow-covered root, she fell hard, and getting back up seemed like an impossible task. Through the white curtain of snow, she glimpsed a structure, a barn perhaps, or some kind of ruins. Shelter. Alara crawled toward it on hands and knees, her dress dragging through the drifts. The building was indeed a barn, ancient and half-collapsed, but it blocked the worst of the wind. She dragged herself inside, finding a corner filled with moldy hay and curled into the smallest ball possible. "This is it," she thought with strange clarity. "This is how I die." She was 18 years old. She'd never kissed anyone, never shifted under the full moon, never felt the joy of running on 4 legs through moonlit forests. She'd spent her entire life being told she was broken, and now she would die, proving them right. "I'm sorry," she whispered to her silent wolf. "I'm sorry we never got to be whole." The cold seeped deeper, numbing everything. Her eyes drifted closed. Somewhere in the darkness she heard howling, not the wind, but actual wolves. Multiple voices, powerful and ancient, singing a harmony that seemed to vibrate in her very bones. She must be hallucinating, she thought. Fever dreams before the end. The howling grew closer, louder, and then, impossibly, she felt warmth. Consciousness returned slowly, dragged up from darkness by the sensation of heat surrounding her. Alara's eyes fluttered open, and she immediately closed them again, certain she was hallucinating. Wolves, massive wolves, larger than any she'd ever seen, were piled around her in a protective circle. Their bodies created a barrier against the cold, their breath steaming in the frozen air. 1, 2, 3. She counted them through half-open eyes, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 enormous wolves, each one silver gray or white as fresh snow, their eyes glowing amber in the pre-dawn darkness. They weren't attacking, they weren't threatening, they were protecting her. The largest one lay directly at her back, its massive head resting near her shoulder. She could feel the steady thrum of its heartbeat, could smell its scent, aged oak, winter snow, pine, and an approaching storm. It was wild and ancient and somehow safe. A wave of power washed over her as the wolf shifted. She heard bones flow, not snap or crack, but flow like water becoming ice, ice becoming water. She heard fabric materialize from thin air, conjured by the magic all-powerful wolves possessed. And then a man's voice, deep and rough with age, spoke. Words that would change everything. "We've been waiting for you, little matriarch. For 300 years we've been waiting." Alara tried to sit up, but her body refused to cooperate. She managed to turn her head enough to see him, a man who might have been in his 50s or his 500s, with silver hair pulled back in a warrior's knot, scars crossing his weathered face, and eyes that held the wisdom of ages. "Who?" Her voice cracked. "Who are you?" "My name is Theron Stormcaller," he said, his hand gentle as he helped her sit upright. The other wolves shifted around them, maintaining their protective circle but giving them space. "I am the commander of the Unchained Guard, and you, little one, are the wolf we've searched for since before your great-great-grandmother was born." "That's impossible. I'm nobody. I'm broken." Theron's laugh was like rolling thunder. "Broken? Oh, child, you are the furthest thing from broken that has ever walked this earth." He gestured to the other wolves, who were now also shifting into human form. "We are the Unchained, sworn by blood and prophecy to serve the matriarch when she finally awakens." One by one, they stood before her. Theron introduced them with military precision. "Cassius Ironwolf, my second in command." A man with jet-black hair and golden eyes nodded, his scent of charcoal and honey wine surprisingly warm. "Lyra Swiftpaw, our tracker, a woman with auburn hair and kind smile, smelling of sage and morning rain. Fennec and Rowan Ashwood, twin blades of the guard, two identical men with copper hair and mischievous grins, both carrying the scent of cedar and summer lightning. Kira Shadowsong, our healer, a dark-skinned woman whose presence radiated calm, her scent like chamomile and moonflowers. Drake Nightfang, weapons master, a scarred giant of a man smelling of leather and steel. Mara Wildheart, our shield, a muscular woman with white blonde hair carrying the scent of glacier water and stone. Soren Ravenswift, our scout, a lean man with sharp features smelling of wind and distant horizons, and Zephyr Moonglow, our youngest, a man barely older than Alara herself, with kind eyes and a scent of fresh grass and dawn light. They were magnificent, terrifying, and they were kneeling before her. "I don't understand," Alara whispered. "What prophecy? What is a matriarch?" Theron's expression grew solemn. "The prophecy has been passed down through the ages, hidden in old songs and ancient texts. It speaks of a wolf born under a dark moon, whose power would be bound at birth, who would suffer and be cast out, and who would rise to unite all wolves under one law, not through conquest, but through divine right." He paused, his eyes holding hers with intensity. "When the weakest becomes strongest, when rejection breaks the chains, when 10 become one guard unbound, the matriarch will rise. She will be both mercy and judgment, both moon and star, both ending and beginning. She will come when the packs have fallen to chaos, when the old ways have twisted into cruelty, and she will remind us what it means to be children of the moon goddess." The words settled over her like a physical weight. "But I can't even shift. My wolf is silent." Your wolf was never silent, a new voice interjected. Kira, the healer, stepped forward. May I? At Alara's hesitant nod, she pressed her hand to Alara's chest, just over her heart. Her eyes glowed silver with diagnostic magic. What she saw made her gasp. Goddess above, Kira breathed. Theron, look at this. The commander moved closer, his own eyes flashing with power as he examined what the healer had found. His face darkened with rage. Binding magic, he growled. Old, powerful, deliberate. He met Alara's confused gaze. Someone bound your wolf when you were an infant. They wrapped chains of magic around your power so tight that it could never surface. No wonder you couldn't shift. Alara's mind reeled. Who would... Why? Would anyone... Fear, Lyra said softly. The kind of power you carry would terrify anyone who didn't understand it. Your parents, Theron said grimly. I can smell their magical signature in the binding. They did this to you, probably thinking they were protecting you, hiding you from those who might seek to use or destroy what you are. The betrayal hit her like a second rejection, but somehow it explained so much. The way her mother had always looked at her with sad, guilty eyes. The way her father had kept his distance as though afraid to get too close. They hadn't rejected her because she was broken. They'd broken her to keep her safe. Can you remove it? She asked, her voice small. Kira shook her head. The binding is too complex, too deeply rooted. It would take months to unravel safely, and even then, she trailed off, exchanging a meaningful look with Theron. But there's another way, the commander said slowly. The rejection. When your mate severed the bond, he created a shock to your entire magical system. He cracked the binding without knowing it. I can feel it, Kira confirmed, her hand still pressed to Alara's chest. The chains are fracturing. Your wolf is waking up. She pulled her hand back, excitement and concern warring in her expression. But when she fully breaks free, the power surge will be significant. How significant? Alara asked. Theron's smile was fierce, significant enough to remind the Northern Territories exactly what a matriarch can do. The change began at sunset. They'd spent the day in the ruins of what Theron called a safe house, an ancient stone structure hidden by magic and time where the Unchained had waited out the centuries. The other members of the guard had been kind, bringing her warm food, clean clothes, and stories of the old days when matriarchs walked openly among the packs. There were 5 of them, originally, Fennec told her, his twin nodding along, each ruling a different territory, each chosen by the moon goddess to keep balance. But they were betrayed, Rowan continued. Alphas who feared their power, who wanted to rule without accountability. One by one, the matriarchs were killed or driven into hiding. Until only the prophecy remained, Zephyr finished softly, and 10 wolves who swore to wait until the last matriarch awakened. Now, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the full moon began to rise, Alara felt something shift inside her chest, a crack, like ice breaking on a frozen lake. Theron, she gasped, clutching her ribs. Something's happening. The commander was at her side instantly. Your wolf is breaking free. Don't fight it, little matriarch. Let her out. The pain was different from the rejection. Not agony, but intensity. Pure, raw power flooding through channels that had been dammed her entire life. Alara fell to her knees, her back arching as she felt her wolf stir for the first time with full consciousness, and her wolf was angry. Hello, little one, a voice purred in her mind. Her voice, but older, wilder, divine. Did you miss me? Who are you? Alara gasped aloud. I am you. The part of you they tried to bury, the part of you that alpha fool rejected, the part of you that is going to show them all exactly what they threw away. Her bones began to flow. Not breaking, never breaking again, but flowing like water, reforming, reshaping. Her spine elongated, her hands and feet transformed into massive paws. Fur erupted across her skin, not brown or gray or black like normal wolves, but pure white that seemed to glow with inner light, shot through with veins of gold that pulsed with each heartbeat. The Unchained Guard stood in a circle around her, their expressions a mixture of awe and fierce pride. Alara's transformation continued, her form growing larger than any normal wolf, larger than an alpha, larger even than Theron in his massive dire wolf form. Power radiated from her in waves, making the air shimmer and the ground tremble. Her eyes, when they opened, blazed with light, one silver like the moon, one gold like the sun. The bindings shattered completely. Energy erupted from her core like an explosion, a pulse of pure divine power that rippled outward through the forest. Trees bent away from the force. The ancient stones of the ruin cracked, and somewhere, far in the distance, every wolf in the northern territories felt it, a presence awakening, ancient and absolute. Alara threw her head back and howled. The sound shook the earth. It echoed off mountains and rolled across valleys. It was both a declaration and a question, both a threat and a promise. Every wolf within 100 miles would have frozen at the sound, their instincts screaming that something fundamental had changed in the hierarchy of their world. When the howl faded, Alara stood on 4 legs for the first time in her life, her massive form dwarfing the other wolves around her. She looked down at her paws, huge and powerful, tipped with claws that gleamed like opals. She felt the strength coiled in her muscles, the sharpness of her senses, the way she could smell each individual wolf in the guard and identify their emotions by scent alone. Wonder, reverence, joy. "She is the matriarch," Theron whispered, his voice thick with emotion. He shifted into his own wolf form, a dire wolf, ancient and massive, and bowed his head in submission. "After 300 years, she has returned." One by one, the rest of the Unchained Guard shifted and bowed. 10 wolves, each one a legendary warrior, each one sworn by prophecy, all kneeling before her in the moonlight. In her mind, her wolf laughed, a sound of pure, unbridled freedom. "They cast us out, little one, called us broken, told us we were worthless." "And now?" Alara asked, marveling at how natural this internal dialogue felt. "Now we show them the truth. Now we become what we were always meant to be." The days that followed were a revelation. Shifting, Alara discovered, came as naturally as breathing once the bindings were gone. Her wolf form felt like home in a way her human form never quite had. She could change at will now. No need to wait for the full moon, no painful transformation, just a smooth flow from one form to another. But the real surprises came when the guard began training her to use her other abilities. "Every matriarch has had unique gifts," Kira explained one morning as they walked through the forest. "But they all shared certain core powers. You'll need to learn to control them before you face the packs." The first was empathy, the ability to sense and, to some degree, influence the emotions of other wolves. When Cassius and Drake staged a mock fight for her benefit, she felt their emotions like colors in the air. Drake's competitive excitement like red flame, Cassius's focused determination like blue ice. "Now," Theron instructed, "calm them." Alara reached out with her consciousness, not sure exactly what she was doing, but following instinct. She felt the connection between herself and the 2 wolves, those invisible threads that connected all wolves to their pack. She pulled gently on those threads, sending a wave of peace and calm down the links. Both warriors stopped mid-strike, blinking in confusion. "That's actually quite unsettling when you're on the receiving end," Drake admitted, shaking his head as if to clear it. The second ability was healing. Mara deliberately cut her arm and asked Alara to close the wound. It took several attempts and Kira's patient guidance, but eventually Alara felt the way the magic flowed, how she could channel her energy into another wolf and accelerate their natural healing. The cut sealed itself in seconds, leaving only unblemished skin. The third ability was the most dramatic, the Alpha Command, but amplified to a degree that made normal Alpha authority look like a polite suggestion. When Alara spoke with her full power, behind her words, every wolf within hearing range had no choice but to obey. "It's not mind control," Theron clarified after she'd accidentally made the entire guard sit in unison. "You can't make anyone act against their core nature, but you can compel compliance with reasonable orders, can stop fights before they start, can prevent violence with a word." "It's how the ancient matriarchs kept peace," Lyra added, "not through fear or dominance, but through divine authority that no wolf could resist." Days turned into weeks. Alara trained from dawn until dusk, learning to control her shifting, her empathy, her healing, her command. But it wasn't all work. The Unchained Guard became her family in a way her blood relatives never had. Fennec and Rowan taught her to fight, their twin blades flashing in perfect synchronization as they demonstrated advanced combat techniques. A matriarch doesn't hide behind her guards, Fennec explained. She stands with them. Lyra taught her tracking, showing her how to read the forest signs, how to identify wolves by their scent alone. Every wolf carries their identity and their signature, she explained. You'll need to know who approaches before they arrive. Soren taught her strategy, using carved wooden pieces to simulate pack movements and territorial disputes. Your power is absolute, but you'll need wisdom to use it well. And Theron taught her what it meant to be a leader. Strength alone doesn't make a ruler, he said one evening as they sat by the fire. Neither does power or even divine right. What makes a true leader is the willingness to bear the weight of every decision, to put the pack before yourself, to be both fierce and merciful in equal measure. His scent, aged oak and winter snow, had become as familiar to her as her own. More than familiar, comforting. Right. Alara noticed the way he looked at her when he thought that she wasn't paying attention, not with worship like the others, but with something warmer, more personal. The mate bond with Cale was severed and scarred, but her heart had begun to heal, and what was growing in its place felt chosen rather than fated. You know, she said softly, meeting his gaze, when I was cast out, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd die alone in that barn. And instead, you found your destiny. I found my family, she corrected, and maybe, she hesitated, then pushed forward with the courage her wolf had given her. Maybe something more? Theron's expression softened, the warrior's mask slipping to reveal the man beneath. A matriarch chooses her mate, he said quietly. She is not bound by fate, but by her own will. If you choose me, little matriarch, I will stand at your side for as long as you'll have me. I choose you, Alara whispered, if you'll have a wolf who's only just learned to shift. He laughed, the sound warm and genuine. You are the most powerful being I've met in 3 centuries. I think I'm the one who should be asking if you'll have me. The bond that snapped into place between them was different from the fated mate bond with Cale. It was quieter, gentler, built on respect and trust rather than divine mandate, but it was no less real, no less powerful. When he kissed her for the first time, surrounded by the ancient forest and the watchful eyes of her guard, Alara felt whole for the first time in her life. But peace never lasts forever. The scout arrived on a cold December morning, stumbling into their territory with the scent of fear and desperation clinging to him like a second skin. Zephyr had found him first, bringing him before Alara and Theron with his hands carefully bound. Speak, Alara commanded, her voice carrying the weight of her authority. The scout, a young wolf from the Silvercrest pack, fell to his knees. Please, I mean no harm. I was sent to scout the Western Territories, and I caught her scent, the Omega who was cast out. You're supposed to be dead, and yet here I stand. Alara kept her expression neutral, though her heart hammered. She'd known this moment would come eventually. What will you tell your alpha? The scout's eyes widened as he looked around at the massive wolves surrounding them, the unchained guard in their dire wolf forms, each one easily twice the size of a normal alpha. I'll tell him what I saw. Then tell him this as well, Alara said, her voice carrying through the clearing. Tell Alpha Kyle that the Omega he rejected has awakened. Tell him the matriarch has returned, and tell him that his judgment is coming. She released him from the command's hold. Go, run back to your pack, and when they come, and they will come, tell them I will be waiting. The scout fled, his terror leaving a sour tang in the air. They'll bring war, Cassius said grimly. Let them. Alara's eyes flashed gold. It's time the Northern Territories remembered what true power looks like. The war party arrived 3 days later, just after Mart's dawn. 20 wolves, all in battle form, led by Alpha Cale himself. Alara watched them approach from the ruins, her guards spread around her in a protective formation. She could smell them from half a mile away. Aggression, certainty, and underneath it all, Cale's distinct scent of forest and embers and steel. And beside him, practically vibrating with excitement, was Seraphina Nightshade. The she-wolf's scent of cinnamon and iron had taken on a sharp, eager edge. the smell of someone anticipating violence. She'd dressed for battle in leather and silver, her auburn hair braided back, her golden eyes gleaming with malice. Alara remained in human form, wearing the simple but elegant clothes the guard had provided, supple leather pants, a tunic of deep blue, boots lined with fur. She stood alone at the front of the ruins, though she could feel her guard positioned strategically in the shadows, ready to strike. The war party shifted to human form 50 feet away. Kyle stepped forward, his expression unreadable. He was just as imposing as she remembered, just as coldly handsome, but the scent of him no longer made her heart race. Looking at him now, she felt only a distant pity for what he'd thrown away. "Alara Moonwhisper," he said, his voice carrying with alpha authority. "You were exiled from Pact territory. Your presence here is a direct violation of my command. Surrender now, and your death will be swift." "My death?" Alara laughed, and the sound held none of the weakness or fear it once had. "Tell me, Alpha Kale, do you know what you rejected when you severed our bond?" "I rejected an Omega who couldn't shift," he replied coldly. "A broken wolf who would have weakened my line and my pack." "No," Alara took a step forward. "You rejected your matriarch. You rejected the one wolf the moon goddess chose to rule over you, and in doing so, you broke the binding that kept my true power locked away." Confusion flickered across his face. Behind him, the war party exchanged uncertain glances. Only Seraphina seemed unmoved, her lip curling in disgust. "More lies," the she-wolf spat. "You're pathetic, Omega. You survived in the wilderness and now you think that makes you special? You think some ragtag group of rogues hiding in the woods makes you powerful?" She laughed, the sound cutting. "Let me show you what real power looks like." Before anyone could react, Seraphina shifted and lunged. She was fast. Alara had to give her that. The she-wolf's form was large and powerful, her attack coordinated and vicious, her claws aimed straight for Alara's throat. Alara didn't move. 10 feet away, Seraphina hit an invisible wall of force and dropped like a stone, yelping in pain and surprise. The scent of her shock and fear flooded the clearing. "Did you really think," Alara said softly, "that you could touch me without my permission?" She shifted. The transformation was instantaneous. One moment human, the next a massive glowing wolf that towered over every other wolf present. Her white and gold fur blazed in the morning sun, her dual-colored eyes fixing on the now terrified she-wolf at her feet. A wave of power washed over the entire war party. Wolves who'd never bowed to anyone found themselves dropping to their bellies, compelled by an authority that transcended normal pack hierarchy. Even Kyle fell to his knees, his eyes wide with shock. Only then did Alara's guard reveal themselves. They emerged from the shadows in their dire wolf forms, massive, ancient, terrifying. Each one dwarfed the largest wolf in Kale's war party. Their eyes glowed with supernatural light, their presence radiating centuries of power and purpose. Theron took his place at Alara's right flank, his silver fur rippling with barely contained strength. The rest of the Unchained Guard flanked her on all sides, 10 legendary warriors, 10 wolves of myth, all united in their protection of their matriarch. The war party's terror was palpable, a thick miasma that hung in the air. Alara shifted back to human form, looking down at Seraphina, who remained pinned by invisible force. "You attacked your matriarch," she said calmly. "The punishment for that is death, but I am not interested in vengeance. I am interested in justice." She released the she-wolf from the hold. Seraphina scrambled backward, her proud bearing shattered. "I strip you of your rank," Alara declared, her voice resonating with divine authority. "You are no longer the daughter of an alpha. You're no longer welcome in any pack under my domain. You will live as a rogue, alone, until you learn humility and compassion. Perhaps in 10 years, if you've changed, you may petition for redemption." Seraphina's face contorted with rage and humiliation, but she couldn't speak against the command. She shifted and fled, her tail between her legs, broken and banished. Alara turned to Kyle, who remained kneeling. The scent of his shock and growing fear mixed with something else. Regret. "Please," he said, his voice rough. "Mercy. I didn't know—" "You didn't want to know," Alara interrupted. "You looked at me and saw only weakness because that's what you chose to see. You rejected the mate bond because you valued power and status over divine will." She paused, letting the weight of that sink in. But unlike you, I will not let pride guide my judgment. She stepped closer, and her guard moved with her, a unified presence of overwhelming force. I could kill you, she continued. By rights, I should. You violated sacred law. You severed a fated bond. You cast out your pack's matriarch. Her eyes blazed. But I'm not here to rule through fear. I'm here to remind the packs what we could be. What we should be. She made her voice carry, ensuring every wolf present heard clearly. I am Alara Moonwhisper, the last matriarch of the wolf nations. This territory, and every territory that borders it, now falls under my domain. I am both mercy and judgment. I am the law. Her power pulsed outward with each word, making the very air shimmer. From this day forward, no Omega will be cast out for being weak. No wolf will be rejected for circumstances beyond their control. Strength will be measured not in dominance, but in character, in compassion, in the willingness to protect those who cannot protect themselves. She looked at Kyle directly. You will return to your pack and announce these new laws. You will serve as alpha under my authority, and if you rule with cruelty again, I will remove you myself. This is your one chance at redemption. Use it wisely. The Alpha King, former Alpha King, bowed his head in submission. Yes, matriarch. And one more thing, Alara added, her voice dropping to something dangerous. My parents, Garrett and Leanna Moonwhisper, send them to me. We have much to discuss about the bindings they placed on their infant daughter. She felt Theron's presence at her side as he shifted to human form, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. A united front, a chosen bond. Now go, she commanded. Spread word of what you've witnessed here. Tell every pack in the Northern Territories that the matriarch walks among them again. Tell them the old ways have returned, and tell them that any who come in challenge will meet the same fate as your she-wolf. The war party fled, their tails low, their pride shattered. When they were gone, Alara let out a long breath and leaned into Theron's warmth. Was I too harsh? She asked quietly. You were perfect, he replied. Justice without cruelty. Strength without sadism, that's what a matriarch should be. Cassius shifted back to human form, grinning widely. Did you see their faces when we revealed ourselves? I thought that one beta was going to faint. The she-wolf certainly deserved what she got, Lyra added with satisfaction, though I almost feel bad for her. Almost, Mara laughed, stretching her arms above her head. 10 years alone might teach her some humility. Or, it'll make her worse. Either way, she won't be bothering anyone for a while. Alara smiled despite the lingering adrenaline. Her guard, her family, had stood with her without hesitation. They'd waited 300 years for her, and they'd do it again if necessary. Come, she said, linking her arm through Theron's. Let's go home. Home. The word felt strange and wonderful on her tongue. For so long she'd had no home, no place of belonging. Now she had an entire territory to rule, a guard who would die for her, and a man who chose to stand beside her. The next few weeks brought a parade of visitors to the ancient ruins that now served as the matriarch's seat of power. First came her parents. Garrett and Leanna Moonwhisper arrived with guards, looking aged and afraid. When they saw Alara in her full matriarch form, massive and glowing, radiating divine authority, her mother burst into tears. We're so sorry, Leanna sobbed, falling to her knees. We thought we were protecting you. When you were born during the dark moon, the pack seers warned us that you carried too much power, that others would try to kill you or use you. We bound your wolf to keep you safe, to let you live a normal life. You crippled me, Alara said coldly. You made me believe I was broken for 18 years. You let me suffer, let me be humiliated, and you said nothing. Her father stepped forward, his head bowed. We made a terrible mistake. We acted from fear instead of faith. If we could take it back. You can't. Alara shifted to human form, studying them both. She could smell their genuine remorse, could feel their grief through her empathic senses. They'd thought they were doing the right thing, however misguided. But, she continued slowly, you also kept me alive. If my power had manifested as a child, you're right. Someone would have tried to use me or destroy me before I was ready. She exchanged a glance with Theron, who nodded encouragingly. So I will not punish you with exile. Instead, you will serve the matriarchy. You will help rebuild what was lost, help educate the packs about the old ways. Your penance is service. Her mother looked up with hope breaking through her tears. Thank you, and you will never lie to me again, Alara finished firmly. One more betrayal, and we're done. Understood? Understood, they said in unison. Next came the alphas of neighboring packs, each one swearing fealty to the matriarch once they witnessed her power and that of her guard. Some came willingly, drawn by the promise of a return to the old ways. Others came out of fear, having heard what happened to Cale Blackthorn and Seraphina Nightshade. Alara judged each one carefully, using her empathic abilities to sense their true intentions. Those who ruled with compassion and justice, she welcomed as allies. Those who ruled through cruelty and fear, she stripped of their authority and replaced with wolves who'd proven themselves worthy. The Northern Territories began to transform under her rule. The old hierarchies based solely on strength began to shift toward hierarchies based on merit and character. Omegas who'd spent their lives in servitude found themselves elevated to positions of respect. Alphas who'd abused their power found themselves cast down. And through it all, the Unchained Guard stood sentinel. 10 legendary warriors who'd waited centuries for this moment, now finally able to fulfill their sacred purpose. 3 months after her awakening, on a cold February night, Alara and Theron stood together under the full moon. The bonding ceremony had been simple, just the two of them and the guard, speaking vows that echoed the ancient rites of the first matriarchs. When Theron marked her, his fangs leaving a glowing symbol on her shoulder, she felt their bond solidify into something unbreakable. Not fate, but choice. Not compulsion, but love. My matriarch, he murmured against her skin. My commander, she replied, pulling him close. My mate? The guard howled their approval, the sound carrying across the territories like a benediction. But even in this moment of joy, Alara felt a shadow on the horizon. Her wolf stirred restlessly, sensing something approaching. What is it? Theron asked, ever attuned to her moods. I don't know, she admitted, but something's coming. Something old and dangerous. As if in answer, the moon overhead flickered, just for a moment, like a candle flame in wind. And on the wind itself came a whisper, ancient and cold, the blood moon rises, the old ones awaken, the matriarch's true test begins. Alara held Theron tighter, watching as the horizon began to glow red. Let them come, she whispered. Whatever they are, we'll face them together. Her guard gathered around them, 10 warriors united in purpose, their eyes glowing in the darkness. The matriarch had returned. The Northern Territories were hers, and whatever ancient evil was stirring in the darkness would learn the same lesson Cale Blackthorn had learned. She was no longer the broken Omega they'd cast out. She was no longer weak or helpless or afraid. She was the last matriarch. She was divine judgment and mercy incarnate. She was the chosen leader of all wolfkind. And she was just getting started. And so Alara Moonwhisper's journey from cast-out Omega to divine matriarch showed that true strength isn't about dominance. It's about rising from your lowest moment and choosing compassion over vengeance, justice over cruelty. Her story reminds us that what others call broken might just be bound, waiting for the right moment to break free. What did you think of Alara's transformation? Would you have shown mercy to Cale, or would you have chosen a different path? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I love hearing your reactions to these stories. If you enjoyed this journey into the world of werewolf matriarchs and ancient guardians, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with friends who love supernatural romance. Your support helps me create more stories like this. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss the next chapter. Because Alara's story is far from over. The blood moon is rising, ancient enemies are stirring, and the true test of the matriarch is about to begin. Thank you for listening. We'll see you in the next chapter, where the shadows deepen and the old ones awaken. Until then, may your inner wolf run free.